Okay, we're going to go ahead and get things rolling. My name is Ashley Stafford, and I am going to be the moderator for today's presentation. I just want to thank all of you again for being with us today. We do have a few housekeeping things we want to go over. All but the speakers will be muted for today's webinar, so we're going to stay on track. After the presentation, and as time permits, we'll answer any questions that you submit via the webinar control panel. And I'm going to show you on the next screen how to do that. And then when the presentation is finished, you're going to see contact information for Dilsay Inc. That way you can contact us with any additional questions or any information that you need after this presentation. Just real quick about the webinar control panel. The orange arrow by the green lets you minimize and maximize your console. The pink denotes the area to type any questions you might have. And of course, we definitely want you guys to ask questions, so make sure you're typing it in this area right here. And then this is where you're going to go ahead and send it, so we get the questions. And like I said, we'll go over all those questions at the end of the webinar. Just to let you know, Paresh Rana is our CEO of Dilsay Inc., and I just want to kind of give you a little bit of background information on him. Paresh has been creating and implementing IT solutions for over 28 years, with the majority of that time being spent in the corporate world creating and supporting IT infrastructures spanning multiple countries and continents. Over the past 5 years, Paresh has refocused and brought his corporate IT experience to small and medium-sized businesses to create solutions that were previously only affordable by large organizations. Most of these solutions were developed specifically for Ace Hardware stores. So just with some of that information, I'm going to turn it over to Paresh, and he's going to show you the presentation.
Thanks, Ashley. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start off by just talking about who and what is Dilsay Inc. Dilsay is a technology service provider. We've been providing IT support for small and medium-sized businesses for many years. We are the creators of the Affinity Small Business Service Solution, and have been using this solution or this server environment in order to facilitate specific IT solutions within small and medium-sized businesses. We have a commitment to creating solutions that help small businesses to compete against the big box companies, and we have a passion to find ways to do that that are creative and inexpensive. We've been very inspired by the ACE model, by the co-op model of doing business, keeping business local and allowing communities to kind of grow around the business. Next slide, please. I want to go over quickly just what we're going to cover today. This is a very high-level talk, and we're going to cover just a quick technology overview. What do certain terms mean, just so that there's a kind of relationship to what we talk about today that makes sense. We're going to go over what's working in typical ACE stores when we are asked to come and do an evaluation. And we're going to go over a little bit of what's not working and what can be done to improve those pieces that are not operating as efficiently as they could be. We're going to talk a little bit about tech budget, and again, at a very high level. And you'll get a sense for that as we move forward. We will spend a little bit of time speaking about VoIP, voice over IP. What is it? What are the advantages of VoIP over traditional telephone lines? And then lastly, what or who is Jujubal? Next slide, please. So the first thing I want to do is really just acknowledge you as ACE owners. ACE as a small business that is built around a co-op model are instrumental in your communities as small business providers in stimulating the economy of the community. We spend a lot of time looking to small business to create solutions that empower small businesses to actually do what they do efficiently, where processes can be automated and technology can be used in order to engage those processes, engage those solutions. We're really, really excited to be a part of this piece of technology infrastructure, of being able to create solutions for small businesses. And I want to acknowledge all of you ACE owners for participating in being community contributors and being able to support the community and be supported by your community. This is a very important and fundamental part to the way we do business and why we do business in that area. Next slide, please. We'll go right into it, and again, I want to just reiterate, this is going to be a really high-level conversation, and in future webinars we'll discuss things in more detail as we see your responses to what it is that is important for you to hear. I want to cover a few terms that we will use today that are prominent in the work that we do and that will be relevant to you. The first word we're going to talk about is the network. What is the network? It's this term that we oftentimes use to describe any number of things, but really for the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to talk about the network as in these two ways. There are, in an ACE environment, we typically have two sections or two segments of your network. There's what we call the PCI network and the non-PCI network. And you're probably familiar with the term PCI. The PCI network is actually the hard wires, the switches, the routers, those pieces that are normally installed by Epicor, or if you didn't have Epicor do it, if it was prior to that, or you had a local vendor do it, it's generally a local networking service provider who will run the wires in your store. Those wires go from a piece of equipment to a panel in the back room. There may be a patch panel on the wall. Those go into a switch that then connects all the computers together. That's what we really refer to when we talk about the network. So in your environment, you have typically a PCI network, which is the network that all your point-of-sale systems, your Epicor Eagle system runs against. And then we have what we call the non-PCI network, which is pretty much everything else that doesn't have to maintain or be subject to the compliancy that is required by the PCI standards. So for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to talk about the PCI network and the non-PCI network. The next point here of technology that's in your environment is your point-of-sale system. This, you probably know this as Eagle. That's each of your cash registers, your back-end, back-office manager's machine that runs Eagle browser, and other pieces of software that you use in order for managing your transactions, managing your reporting, etc. Mostly today, your point-of-sale system for most of our ACE clients is supplied by Epicor, and that's the Eagle software. So that's what I would be referring to when I talk about the point-of-sale system. The third piece of technology that's important in your business is the internet access. In today's world, you have to have internet access. It's a standard operating procedure within the business environment. For ACE owners, it's important because the internet access is used for your credit card processing, and as ACE brings out new initiatives like online ordering, those kind of initiatives are facilitated by the fact that you have internet access. For those of you who have multiple stores, this is really important because typically in your environment you'll have an Eagle server located at one of your stores, and then the other stores will be connected via the internet, via some sort of virtual private network to the main store that has your Eagle server. And this is what you would use in order to, your internet is then used to facilitate that communication between the point-of-sale systems in the other stores and the Eagle server located at one of your locations. Lastly, the Wi-Fi access. This is a piece of technology that's vital to your store if you have RF guns. It's the mechanism by which you do your inventory processing. And as time goes by, technology, as it becomes more and more moving into the wireless world, people are using laptops today. Your Wi-Fi access and the security associated with that is really important in being able to facilitate, being able to move around between your stores. As a manager or as an owner, the Wi-Fi system becomes really vital for that. So that's a fourth piece of the technology that you implement in your stores or is implemented by one of your vendors in your stores that is really crucial to the way your stores work. Next slide, please. So when we talk about technology, we also talk about the phone systems. Your phone system is a vital part of your infrastructure. This is the phone system is a vital part of your infrastructure, and this is the mechanism you have for your customers, potential customers, calling in, checking in on product, checking in on availability, and of course general communication. So I probably don't have to say too much about this because I think you all know how important that piece of your technology is. Email specifically that was specifically used in the past for internal communications, communication between managers, communication between you and your vendors. This is becoming more and more a vital part of the technology infrastructure in your store anymore, as you might have seen some of the new initiatives from ACE where you are doing online ordering. Those online orders are fulfilled via some sort of email notification to a system internally, whether that's a handheld device or an email to a desktop. This is a new mechanism that's available now, and email is becoming more and more important in order to facilitate sales as the landscape of that of the sales structure shifts. Lastly, calendaring. This is something that you may or may not have thought about too much. We have a number of clients that utilize calendaring for various purposes, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But essentially what I mean by calendaring when I say calendaring is being able to schedule and have that schedule in some sort of electronic format that then allows that schedule to be shared amongst the people who need to see that, employees, managers, etc. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about today, really we'll spend most of our time today talking about a little bit about what's working and a fair amount about what's not working as efficiently as it could be working. What's working, these are obvious. Your business is operating, and it operates pretty well. You were able to make sales, and that's a function of your Eagle system being in place, a function of your point of sale system working well. And typically we will see that in our ACE environments, the Eagle system works really well. You were able to make sales and you were able to process your inventory, etc. on the back end. The network. We typically find the network is working reasonably well enough that your Eagle system is functioning, and this is really important to you. Now, it may not be working as efficiently as it could. It may have been, there may be pieces of it that could be revamped, could be upgraded, but in essence, your network is functioning, because if it wasn't, your Eagle system wouldn't. So it is something that we see functioning. One of the pieces that we see is working when we go into existing stores. Your phones are working, of course. Phone lines bring your calls in. They make you, they allow you to make outbound calls in whatever ways required in order to facilitate the business. So this is definitely a piece that's typically working. And then your firewall, especially if you're in a multi-store environment, the firewall is crucial. The way it's configured is crucial. And if you are able to process transactions, your firewall is probably working well enough and working efficiently. So these are the things that we typically find is working adequately in order for your business to operate. Next slide, please. This is the point at which we typically get involved in looking for where efficiencies can be brought into your business. Technology is fundamental to the way your business operates, and these are some of the pieces that we typically go into ACE stores looking at, because these are the places that are typically that we are typically able to improve. So the first instance here is Eagle licensing. There is, in particular, the limitations of Eagle licensing when you're using a laptop. So for those of you who have multiple stores, you generally have a laptop as a manager or an owner. You're moving between your stores, and you want all your data in one place. There are some limitations around the way Eagle licenses work, which then allows you, which requires you to have multiple licenses depending on where your laptop is going to, in which location your laptop is. It's, this is an area that you can speak with your Eagle representative about, your LTS, and inquire specifically about DHCP based licenses for those laptops that allows the laptops to roam from store to store, or also allows it to be able to run across your Wi-Fi network rather than having it be hardwired all the time. Another area that we find that can be improved, while we oftentimes see that the network is working, the network infrastructure is fundamental to everything in your organization functioning well. Your sales are going to be hindered. Your lines at your checkout counter are going to get bigger and bigger if your network is slowing things down between your point of sale station and your Eagle server in the on the back end. There are many things we oftentimes find when we go into organizations, when we go into ACE stores. We find that sometimes over the years, especially if it's a store that's 5, 6 years old, we typically find that over that time the network gets band-aided. Maybe you needed an extra terminal at a certain location, and you needed to have that up and running quickly, or temporarily you may have needed to have a second computer set up in your office. We find that in these environments, maybe an employee in the store or the store owner has patched pieces of the network together in order to expand it quickly. This is an area that oftentimes results in problematic network functionality. It becomes really difficult to diagnose these problems. We call this process cascading, where maybe you had one network cable or one network connection at a particular point, and you needed multiple workstations at that point, and you stuck a network switch under the counter and branched that out. We call that cascading. This cascading, while it does work, eventually, over periods of time, it will start creating problems on the network because it's an additional piece to manage that's not easily found. And then it becomes really difficult to actually diagnose problems as they come up on your network. Next slide, please. Another area that we find that can be improved or isn't really working really well is the area of PCI compliancy. I'm sure all of you have heard from Epicor over the years. We see this come up often. There is a strong push to be PCI compliant on the network itself, on the way your workstations are set up, your point of sale stations are set up, as well as the way your Wi-Fi infrastructure is set up. All of these things lend to PCI compliancy. You've probably seen the myriad of documents that have come in front of you, and I know it's not always a comfortable read, but this piece of your business is really important. More and more we are seeing companies' systems being compromised and data being lifted out of that company environment. Your customers' information is important. It's important that it stays secure, and being PCI compliant is a huge step in the direction of making sure that that happens. Please take this piece really seriously, and definitely check in with Epicor. There are a number of different providers out there who can help you with PCI compliancy and evaluate your network infrastructure, evaluate your firewall infrastructure, and make sure that your PCI network is in fact PCI compliant, so that you stay safe and within the structure that is set out by the credit card processing companies. Excuse me. The phone system, this is an interesting area. Phones work. You pick up the phone, you get a dial tone, you dial out, a call comes in, you pick up the phone, you can answer it. We see phone systems in all kinds of varieties, from simple analog lines that come into the organization in 1 or 2 phones on the point of sale stations and maybe at the manager's desk, to PBX systems, what we call private branch exchange, or simply in today's world we just call them phone systems. That normally entails a box on the wall, lines from the phone company come into that box on the wall, and then from the box there's a whole series of lines that might go out to 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 extensions that you have placed around the store. When calls come in, perhaps all the phones ring, that kind of thing. This is probably something that you're very, very familiar with. One of the areas that we see that can be improved is these phone systems particularly, especially in stores that are 5, 6, 7 years old. Your phone system is an aging technology. You're running on analog circuits or analog lines from your phone company, and there's some cost degradation that comes with that over a period of time. In addition to the cost of actually maintaining the phone system or bringing it up to speed so that it continues working. The added cost of replacing those analog phones, which are typically proprietary to that phone system, is also something that we find is a pain point for a number of our ACE stores. There are a number of different solutions around this. We'll talk a little bit about voice over IP later, and that's one of the ways that you can solve this particular problem and get into a new phone system. You've probably heard of many different VoIP companies out there and there are a myriad of them out there today, and they all have varying degrees of functionality that may or may not work in a retail environment. So it's important to kind of check those pieces out, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a later slide. Aging desktops. The aging in stores that are 4, 5, 6 years old, you're getting to the end of life of the computers that you may have purchased in order to run your point-of-sale system or run maybe the manager's computer in the back or your service desk computer. That's about the life. 4 to 5 years is actually on the top end of the life of a typical PC computer. Now you've got a number of options for that. Epicor has some options for replacement of your aging desktops that you might be able to talk to them directly about. And what that provides for you, the benefit that provides for you is twofold. The first benefit is that you end up with a desktop that has a much faster processor. It's a more recent technology. The computers they run quieter. They have less chances of breaking down when you least expect them to break down, and they also have the newer Windows 7 operating system. One of the second issue I wanted to talk about regarding aging computers is the fact that most of them are still running Windows XP. We find this in a number of stores, that Windows XP is still the operating system running on a fair number of computers. You may or may not have heard, but Microsoft have stopped the support of Windows XP. It is no longer a supported product. There are no more updates being done for it, and as such, that operating system is now no longer considered PCI compliant. So having those on your quote-unquote PCI network immediately gets you out of compliancy, because those are Windows XP machines. I'm sure you have heard about this. This is an area which is probably a good place to spend some time and energy in your organization reviewing which computers are running Windows XP, which computers are getting to that 4 or 5 year mark where it's going to start giving you problems, and then start putting maybe a plan or a budget in place in order to address that. The PCI piece, of course, is vital, as we talked about in the first point on this slide. The paint dispenser computers, I'm not going to speak too much about this, but just know that the serial connections, these paint dispenser computers are connected to the computer that's doing your paint matching via what we call a serial cable. It's an old technology, and these connectors are more and more, they're becoming obsolete on the computer equipment that you can now purchase. So as time goes, these will go away. There are other ways in which the dispenser computer can be connected to your MatchRite or your paint matching computer, and especially in the environments where paint is a big part of your business and you have multiple paint dispensers. This piece is a piece that we often run up against as a pain point, where the store owner has to choose between one or the other paint mixer, or use a manual entry in the paint dispenser machine in order to facilitate the dispensing of paint. The next point here is backup of key equipment. I cannot stress enough how important this is. This is something that goes, it gets overlooked a fair amount in ACE stores. It's typically business as usual, and what we find is ACE owners have so much going on. There's so many pieces of your business that you're managing that the technology piece oftentimes ends up being one of the last pieces that you deal with. You tend to want to deal with it, and this goes for all of us. We tend to want to deal with the technology issues after they become problematic, and this area of maintaining backups of your key equipment will reduce your downtime dramatically in the event of a point of sale system failure, or if specifically on the paint side, because paint is such a big part of your revenue generation in any store. The paint mixes and the computers for the paint mixes and the computer for your color matching, these computers ought to be backed up in such a way that they could be restored within a very short period of time to the original state of the computer prior to it crashing, whether it was due to a virus that caused the computer to crash, given that it's a Windows computer, or because there was a hardware failure that requires you now to replace the box itself. Being able to have that turnaround on both a point-of-sale station, a paint mixer station, or any one of the computers, perhaps your accounting computer, any one of those vital components in your network that will cause you to be able that would cause you to hinder the sales of any product within the store, or create long lines in the event that you lose a point-of-sale station. The second thing I want to talk about with respect to backups of key equipment, one is the actual data backup. We've just talked about that. Consider purchasing a spare computer to keep on your shelf as a quick replacement for any one of these devices. And in order to do that, it really does make sense to start standardizing on the particular piece of equipment that you have within your store. So if you're using Dell Optiplex computers, then continue using Dell Optiplex computers for as long as you can to keep your platform standard. When you keep your platform standard, you are able to replace a machine when it's not working well really quickly with a like computer from your shelf and pop it into place, restore the data onto it, and then have that piece of equipment up and running really quickly. Lastly, I want to touch on the surveillance system. Most of you have surveillance systems in your stores, and if your store is more than 4 or 5 years old, you might start noticing issues with the surveillance system. Cameras themselves, you might start seeing parts of the image starting blurry, maybe color shifting, maybe the focus has gotten is now off on the device, maybe has got moved around over the years, and you're not really providing value that a surveillance system could provide you. Now, having said that, most of you with surveillance systems that are more than 4 or 5 years old are probably having have these analog systems in place. The analog systems, they were the time that they were there. That technology has shifted. We now have IP cameras, the benefit of which will provide you with much higher resolution for the image that you're capturing. What that allows you to do is zoom into an image and be able to see with more clarity, more detail, what is going on in the event of a theft in the store, a slip and fall, which is really why you are putting these systems in place in the first place. Next slide, please. To continue on this topic, for those of you with multi-store, with multiple stores, I want to talk a little bit about communication and how communication can be improved between your stores, between the employees in the stores, and between managers and owners within the store environment itself. Communication is vital, and creating, using technology to support that communication in such a way that your communication is efficient, you don't have to repeat too many times, and that employees know where to go to find a particular piece of information that they might be looking for. Creating some standards around that are supported and facilitated by your technology will go a long way towards improving employee relationships in the store and providing your employees with what they need in order to do their job well. The first piece of technology I want to talk around that is email systems. Oftentimes we find that store owners are using emails with Yahoo or with Gmail account names, and there's probably, while that might be fine for communication with people you know, you might find that because you've invested in a domain name, and most of you have because you've got a website, you've put some branding around the website, around the particular A store that you have, and it makes total sense, don't you think, to leverage that branding with your domain name to create an email system that actually utilizes that gives you the ability to create mailboxes for your employees to be able to have that communication with them, for group mailboxes, so that you can have a sales at myace.com or a orders at myace.com, specifically to facilitate some of these initiatives that ACE is putting in place, or if beyond that, to actually enhance or leverage your branding that you've already been spending time, effort, and money to put out there. creating a consistent message using your brand in your domain, utilizing the internet is a part of the standard operating marketing anymore. And in conjunction with the branding, having that system be in place where all your employees have access to a company email that they can then share information, and you can dissipate information to them with. Secondly, shared documents. You have a number of documents floating around on hard drives on your computer, maybe on desktops. Mostly we find them on people's desktops. Maybe the manager's computer has all these documents there, and maybe it's a document that's specifically for flyers that you might be creating, or you might have a standard template that you use when you have specials going and you want to put a little piece of paper on against a particular product on your shelf. So these documents, having them in a location that's easily found, where during your training process with your employees you can have them understand, here's where you go look for the kind of things that you want. It empowers them to be able to find what they need, to go get what they need when they need it, and it frees up your time, your manager's time, from the little things that oftentimes might take up time unnecessarily. Now, with respect to shared documents, Yahoo, Gmail, there are so many vendors out there that allow you online access to documents, and being able to store them in the cloud. There's Dropbox. There's a number of different providers out there. Whatever provider you choose for these shared document environments, one of the things that we've done in the past with the Affinity server that we have supplied into Ace hardware stores is we've created shared documents on the network in three kind of buckets. One bucket that employees can see, and everybody gets to see what's in that bucket. One bucket, just the documents that managers and owners need to see, and managers and owners are the only ones that have access to those documents. And then documents that maybe only the owners want to see. And we can create a structure around that to keep those documents safe to the eyes of those people that you need to see them. So whatever system you choose, make sure that system gives you some flexibility in creating these buckets of security in order to be able to separate out your documents, and that will make it a whole lot more useful for you. Shared calendars. Calendars are not used as much as I would like to see them used in ACE environments. We have a number of ACE clients who are using calendaring system that we've supplied within the Affinity server environment. But again, that's not the only place you can get shared calendars. Google offers shared calendars, Yahoo offers shared calendars, and there are a number of other providers that functionality for you. Why do you want this? Shared calendars allows you an electronic way via the web, or if you use Outlook, or if you're on an Apple computer, you could use iCal, but they provide you a mechanism to electronically set up your employee schedules, electronically set up events that you might have going on, specials that you might be running, and it puts it all in one place. It allows people to go find it when they need it. They don't have to constantly ask the same questions about when are they working, when are they not. Managers have access to that, and again, there is certain levels of security that you can apply to these calendars, where some people can edit them, other people can just view them, and you can leverage great efficiencies by implementing something like this, and then allowing your staff to have access to being able to see the different initiatives that are going on within your environment. I think particularly in multi-store environments, this is crucial because you've got so much going on. Putting it down electronically and making it available just makes the whole process easier, and it leverages the technology to ease your burden and your manager's burden. Lastly, Windows and viruses. Your point-of-sale system typically, and your PCI network, the computers that you have, are typically running Windows. What that unfortunately lends itself to is viruses. It is inevitable on a Windows system that a computer at some point that is connected to the internet will have viruses on it. That might be as simple as some malware that pops up annoying little messages, or it could be as malicious as a piece of software that's now sending out information that you've got stored on your computer that really should be for your eyes only. Now, if you aren't aware of this, ACE has an agreement with Epicor with respect to the way that your SonicWall firewalls are created, and you might want to inquire about this if you're not sure about it. Speak to your LTS at Epicor and ask them about virus protection for your Windows computers. Your license has already got included within it through the association with ACE, free licenses for you to use, I believe it's the McAfee antivirus software. So you should have this software installed on all your Windows computers, and your firewall is really the place, that the thing that kind of is the border between the internet and your computers on your internal network. And that particular device can be configured to be the first kind of point of defense for viruses, and it's really important that you have that in place. And I suggest that you check in with your current technology provider or your Epicor provider to make sure that those pieces are in place. Now, in addition to that, there are other ways to actually circumvent. We work under the principle that a Windows computer is eventually going to get a virus. What do we do when that happens? And the simple answer is backup. Backup and specifically image backups. So this word is important. An image backup is a backup that you will do of your system that takes the entire system and it backs it up. And when you restore it, it wipes the system completely clean and then restores the entire computer with the operating system, with the software, and all the configuration intact. So there's nothing more to do once the restore is complete. So make sure that you have an image backup that allows you to go back to a particular date and say restore from this date, and off it goes. Next slide, please. At a very, very, very high level, I want to talk about this. I almost removed this slide because it was it's so difficult to talk about a tech budget when ACE owners, ACE stores are so different from each other. So I'll talk about it at a very high level. On an average, whatever it is you've set aside for your tech budget, and if you haven't, my recommendation is that you take a look at the last few years and really look at what you've spent for fixing computers, buying new computers, replacing devices like your scanning devices, your printer devices, and just kind of get an idea as to what that budget looks like. Our recommendation is about 15% of your budget, 15 to 20% of your budget, you should set aside for fixing broken stuff, things that don't work anymore or that suddenly break on your network. Really, once you've got your network to a place, or your entire infrastructure to a place where things are running smoothly, you should only need about 15% of your annual budget for that purpose. The rest of your budget, we would like to see the rest of your budget used to purchase additional technology that really enhances your business, that allows you to service your client base or your customer base better, to have more efficiency for your staff, and to perhaps allow for training of your staff on those technologies that allow them to be better adept at servicing your customer base. So there's no real number here that's a hard dollar amount, but kind of scale based on the organization size that you have and what you've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. And the rhetorical question on this page is, where would you like to see most of your IT budget go if you had set aside your IT budget? Can you find ways in which implementing technology can really enhance the way you approach your sales and the way the experience that your customers have within the store? As an example, you might be considering putting up video end caps. That's a technology expense that's really inside of that 85% block that says, hey, if I spend this money, I can improve the quality of my customer experience. Next slide, please. So I've talked about this before, and I can't say enough how important the stability of your network infrastructure is. Everything depends on it. If something in that infrastructure goes down, it impacts the entire infrastructure. So please do take time to evaluate this. Find a vendor in your local area. If you're not too comfortable with that, check in with us, and we can assist you in actually doing this piece, because it is a vital piece to knowing, to creating an infrastructure that works consistently, solidly, and requires very little maintenance over time if it's solid to start off with. Next slide, please. I'll talk very quickly about VoIP. You've heard this term before. The term VoIP stands for Voice over IP, and essentially what this means is VoIP services is phone service that uses the internet in order to communicate, versus traditional lines as you've perhaps known them to be, where you get an analog line and each line represents one phone call that can happen concurrently. So the basic difference between VoIP and traditional lines is VoIP uses the internet, so you're not limited to the number of calls that can be made concurrently, certain the technology itself, and whereas traditional lines use hardwire, and you actually have to have hardwire pulled in if you don't have an, in addition to your internet connection. VoIP technology has matured very, very well over the years. It's very, very stable. The internet's very stable, and it sustains and carries that voice with quality that's rival. There are a myriad of VoIP providers online, and one of the pieces I want to mention here is really important. We've heard a lot of our ACE clients asking us about VoIP and wanting to move in that environment. Our Affinity server and the VoIP solution we've put together was developed over 2 years in conjunction with our ACE clients, because there's some very specific things that are required in retail from a phone system that the typical VoIP systems that you can get from most of the online providers doesn't really cater to. The idea that a phone call comes in, that you can pick it up at the point of sale desk, put that call on hold, and that call is available everywhere, that just seems normal to you because all analog phone systems work that way. But that's a difference in the technology. Typical VoIP systems are really designed for office environments where each phone is a separate device, and when you call in, the receptionist answers and then directs your call by transferring it. That's not how your environment works, and it's really important for you to find a VoIP system that works in an environment that allows you to have very quick access to your phone call once you've put it on hold, that can be picked up anywhere with minimal to no training of your staff members. I'm not going to talk too much about the details. You'll have access to these slides via the download, but I do want to speak specifically about the advantage, some of the advantages. One of the advantages being mailboxes with voicemail to email. We talked about email systems earlier, and one of the things we start doing with email systems is creating group mailboxes. If you have multiple shifts, multiple managers, you can then have all your managers receiving emails into these group mailboxes and managing them whenever it's their time to be on in the store. We can have voicemails that get left on the system either overnight or perhaps when there's an overflow of calls. Those voicemails go to a mailbox and get sent to you by email with the voicemail attached to it. This is a great part of the VoIP technology. A second piece to that is faxing. Faxing can work in exactly the same way. Some of you have had experience with fax to email, and that's all built into the kind of basic VoIP infrastructure, where fax comes in, instead of being printed out on a machine and pieces of paper being moved around, perhaps getting lost. The fax is delivered to an email mailbox, maybe a group mailbox that multiple managers and owners can kind of look at. Next slide, please. That brings me to the topic of Jujubel. You've seen the logo at the bottom of screens. A few years ago, we were selling our Affinity service, which has a phone system built into it, a VoIP-based phone system, to many clients, ACE clients in particular. We were then connecting our clients up to other VoIP providers because we really weren't, we were a technology product developer, and we would service your network technology. We weren't a phone company. But what we found over the 2 years is with VoIP systems and the VoIP providers that we were connecting to, the level of service we were getting just wasn't up to par with the way we are typically used to servicing our customer base. After that time, what it would take to support that customer base, Jujubel was born out of that as a way to fill a need that our customers had, that we thought we could fill better than anybody else out there could, because we understood your business, we understood what the telephone system needed to be and how it needed to function and Jujubel was born out of that. So Jujubel is our VoIP telephone provider. We've been operating for many, many, many months. We actually started in May of last year, and we've been doing really, really well, especially in the ACE environment in conjunction with our Affinity server. Next slide, please. That kind of brings me to the end of my part of this presentation, and we'll open it up for some questions now. Do we have time for questions? We'll open it up for some questions now. There's some information here. Please feel free to give us a call if you have any questions about anything we've talked about. Certainly we'll expand on some of these topics as the webinars continue over the next few months. And if you need anything even to be explained outside what we just did now, we're happy to explain that and put you in touch with the right people if that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Great job, Paresh. So we got a few questions in while you were presenting. The first question came in from Mark. He said, is this approved by corporate ACE?
Hi, Mark. No, there isn't a corporate ACE approval on the products that we have supplied. Our products have been built directly in conjunction with ACE owners who have had needs that were not on the table as the needs that were being addressed by corporate specifically. So we developed the products with the needs and the requirements that we gathered directly from ACE owners themselves, and then fulfill those needs.
Awesome. The next question came in from Adam. Do I need a high-speed internet connection for the phone system to work properly?
The short answer is yes. Having a high-speed connection for VoIP is necessary. When we say high-speed connection, typically DSL or cable modem connections, what we call broadband connections, is adequate. A typical broadband connection is going to be about 10 or 12 megabits per second downstream, and anywhere between 1.5 to 3 megabits per second upstream, and that's more than sufficient to carry a VoIP signal.
Okay. So the next one came in from Steve. It says, if we're on a contract for existing phone service, will you participate financially in the payoffs as I go with your system?
That's a great question. The answer is it depends. Certainly we are willing to look at that. Let's take a look. One of the things that we do very, very well, and how we've been able to make all of this work, is we really stand as an advocate for our customers. So when we take on your technology infrastructure, we take on your technology infrastructure looking for the best possible solutions for you. So what that sometimes means is when we are looking to see whether the systems we have would be a good fit for you, is we'd ask you for your telephone bill. We do an analysis of your telephone bill, and based on that analysis, we will determine what makes sense, whether we have a package that would make sense, or whether that we can create a package that would make sense for you. And if so, we'll present a comparison of what we would provide and how that would compare against what you have today. And then at the end, you get to make a choice. And certainly we can enter into some negotiation. It really is a case-by-case basis.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions right now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email us at sales@deltainc.com, and we'll get those answered for you. But we just want to thank everybody again for coming, and thanking Paresh for putting this presentation together. And again, feel free to reach out to us anytime for any additional questions you have. And then we will also put this on our website for you to view as well at a later date. So anything else, Paresh, before we...
No, I just want to say thank you for all of you who joined. I know you have a lot to do, and making the time to taking an hour out of your day is not always the easiest thing to do. I spent a lot of time in ACE stores and a lot of time with ACE owners, and I know that your days are very, very full. So I just want to say I really, really, really appreciate the time you've taken to be here today, and I hope that we've provided you with some value.
All right. Well, thank you again to everybody, and we hope to hear from you all soon. Take care.